Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Business Plans 101. I am really excited to have you here. I've got the room filling up already. It is really good to have you join me. And if you are in the Midwest, I am sorry. I apologize for the weather because it is a chilly, chilly one, although it's a pretty day out. So you don't really care about that. I do care about where you're coming from, though. So why don't you go ahead, put in the comments where you're from and maybe a little bit about what you are thinking about doing in terms of a business idea, or if you've got a business already up and running and you're maybe thinking about expanding and therefore you're thinking about getting a little bit more clarity by having a business plan. I know many of you are coming here as entrepreneurs, as solopreneurs. So I'm sorry, that is Ivica. I apologize if I'm saying that name wrong. Ivica Burlik from Croatia. Wow, I don't know that I've ever spoken to anyone from Croatia. You are my first. That is, it's nice to meet you. Let me know what let me know in the comments, Ivica, what you are, or Ivica or Ivica. I apologize, but if I'm saying that wrong. Cassandra from Ontario. Excellent. You guys are enjoying quite a winter as well. I think winter starts in August for you, right, Cassandra? Very good. Maria is from Kampala in Uganda. Very good, Maria. Good to have you join us here today. Athens, Greece. Apostolos. Very good. Apostolos, nice to meet you. Let me know what kind of business you guys, what business ideas that you may have. Because I know some of you are coming, many of you are coming actually with just ideas, with a business idea. And that's maybe why you're looking to get a business plan to put together. Diego, you are in Mexico. And Cassandra. Winter starts in December. Yeah. Okay. I know better. I know it gets chilly up there kind of early. All right. Well, let me know what kind of businesses that you guys are thinking of. And the reason why I'm asking that is if you just have ideas for businesses, and I know if you're anything like many entrepreneurs, you have like a new business idea every time you get out of the shower. Am I right? If that is you, just let me know what maybe some of the more serious ideas are. So that way I can make them a little bit more relevant to you as we go through today in terms of the business plan. So Cassandra is saying helping people, dance instructor. Excellent. Very good. And Ivica, I own 2 companies and in financial consulting. Excellent. So you already own 2 companies. Very good. Already incorporated. Fantastic. I love that. Taking lots of action early on. So what we're going to be talking about today, seems like you guys, some of you have already got different things down. Melinda is looking at parenting classes. Melinda, I don't think I saw where you were from. Let us know where you're from, Melinda. I'd love to. We've got people from all over the place. Yeah, the room's really filling up. So for those of you who are just coming in now, if you are just joining me and you're here for the next roughly hour and 15 or so minutes, it's going to go till 4:30 Eastern, so it's going to be about an hour and a half. I know some of you cannot hang around that long. That's totally fine. If you signed up through Eventbrite, you will be getting this on replay. If you're already on YouTube, you know where to come back to see this. So I just want to let you know that you will be getting a replay in this in your email inbox if we already haven't communicated. And let's see here. Vimbai is from Zurich. Welcome. Expanding my consulting and leadership coaching business from EMEA market into the DAC market. Okay, excellent. I'm not sure that I know what that is. EMEA. You'll have to help me out with that. So I'm not sure what that is. I'm trying to think. I feel like I should know that, but it's escaping me right now. Melinda's in Florida, rubbing it in. Excellent, thank you. I have lots of friends down there who love to rub it in the fact that I'm living in Indiana. Business Community 2.0 Apostolos combined with existing real estate agency that you own. Excellent. All right, very good. And Darcy, hello. Good to see you, Darcy. Let me know where you're from. Glad you're joining me from YouTube. And Apostolos says AI told helping people. AI2. Oh, gotcha. AI2. Helping people network and refer business. Excellent. Very good. All right. Well, we've got a lot of people joining me. So what I just want to let you guys know, we're going to be covering a lot of business plan stuff today. And yes, you will absolutely be getting a copy of a full business plan. I'm going to show you how to get that at the end. Because if I tell you now what you're going to do is you're going to multitask and you're going to like wander over to the site and you're going to download it and you're going to be messing around with that. And I don't want you to miss the stuff for how to use this stuff in advance. So I promise you, you're going to be getting all this stuff on replay. What I want you to do right now is just stay plugged in. Stay plugged in with me. Stay as engaged as you are right now. And I just want to make sure that you're asking good questions. You're staying engaged. I will be asking you questions along the way. This will not be one of those death by PowerPoint endeavors. I'm going to be asking lots of questions, and I'm going to be asking questions that maybe are relevant to you. So as much as I know a lot of people, I actually was surprised to find out that as many as a third are watching on their phones, which is interesting to me. I didn't actually really consider that when I was putting these things together. So I know sometimes the slides are a little small, but that doesn't excuse you from trying not to multitask. What we're doing is trying to train our brains, because for those of you who have the idea of the minute, right? I mentioned all the different ideas that you have when you're standing in the shower or walking on a treadmill or going for a run or driving down the interstate. All of those things are fine. That's when our brains are in our alpha state and we're creating and generating lots of ideas. And that's what's amazing about entrepreneurship. What's not amazing about entrepreneurship is wandering, right? Where you're not taking any direct action in any one specific direction. So you just kind of vibrate in place going, how about this? How about that? How about this? How about that? Right? You're not really taking any real traction, not really taking any real action or getting any real traction. So what I want you to do is just focus for the next hour or so, ask questions along the way, and I will come back to those questions as you ask them, okay? So go ahead, type them in there if you've got questions on the way. Just make sure that you give me some context. Don't just say like, yes, I like it. I have no idea what that means, because I might have said something 3 minutes prior and I have no idea what you're talking about, but I will do the best I can. All right, Vimbal says, oh, EMEA, gotcha. Europe, Middle East, Africa. That makes a lot more sense. Okay, I was feeling like I should know that, but I apologize if I what is DAC? DAC would be I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what DAC is now. Because you said EMEA into the DAC market. I feel like I should know that. I'm just truly having a brain cramp. Oh, here we go. DAC region is a business and cultural group of Deutschland, Germany, obviously, Austria, and Switzerland. Ah, I am now educated. Thank you, Vimbai. I am now better as a human being for you being here today. Thank you. I did not know these things. All right. Well, so let's get to it. So again, one of the quick things is just the kind of the ground rules. Please don't multitask. Try to stay plugged in as best you can. I'm going to be mentioning a lot of things. I don't want you to miss anything. That might be a nugget that could really be a game changer for you. One other thing is that we're going to be talking about this, and in case I don't bring it up later, I want to bring it up now. Many people will come up to me and say, man, that was great. I took so many notes and blah, blah, blah. And that was great, but I don't do this for the applause. Although, trust me, I appreciate it. I really do. But what I want to know is what's going to be different for you tomorrow. What are you going to implement tomorrow? What are you going to be doing? Because business plans are great, and they can provide a tremendous amount of clarity. And really having stuff written down, specifically having things written down on an actual piece of paper, or even typed out, it doesn't give you the ability to wander, because sometimes our minds will play tricks on us and we're thinking that we're actually taking action when we're actually action faking. We're thinking we're doing things that are really important when we're really not. So, for example, today I signed a business agreement that could potentially be worth, literally without exaggeration, several $1 million, if not tens of millions of dollars. And it was interesting that I was finding other things to do rather than sign that agreement. And I'm like, what am I doing? This thing could be such a game changer in so many aspects of not just my life, but the lives of people who I'm bringing different pieces of infrastructure to. Why am I delaying this? Like, what's going on in my head? So again, our minds can play tricks on us. And I just want to make sure that you are writing things down. And that is the real value of having a business plan and specifically printing things out and having them in front of you, so you're not going to allow yourself to wander. So let's get to it. So first and foremost, I want you to understand that this is going to be a strategic approach to managing your life and your business. I know like strategic sounds like super militant. That's not at all my intent. My intent here is not to make it sound militant, but really about being strategic means like from top down versus tactical, which would be bottom up, right? Not that the tactics are a bad approach or they're bad, but the tactics need to have meaning. They need to be in alignment with a strategy, right? So what I want you to do is I just want you to understand this is a strategic approach. And, so who is this for? This is either for new or established businesses, either or. And the reason that that is important is because whether you're a new or established business, you may need a business plan. Just as an example, because it's the time of the year and it's beginning of a new year, I reviewed my business plan from several years ago and I updated it. I changed a couple things because I want to make sure that the things that I'm doing, I'm still going in the same strategic direction that I set 24 months ago. So the reason why this might be important for you, whether you have a new business or you're trying to expand into a new market, you're trying to attract a new avatar. We'll talk about avatar here in a bit, but there's lots of different reasons. So this is whether you have a new business or an established business, this is going to be relevant for you. One quick thing I do want to offer for you guys. If you want to go, don't do it now. We'll talk about it later. But for those of you who have an interest, I do have a school community where right now it's totally free to join. That will not stay that way forever. So if you are interested, you can go over to school at strategicboardroom.com. I will again talk about this later, and I will put the link in the show notes. Okay, and I'll also put the notes here in the comments. Vimbai, only a pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you. Vimbai also says, these are markets I work in and want to expand in the DAC markets, developing a business plan that outlines a strategy that taps into this market. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So really your question or your comment there, Vimbai, is well timed, because what we're going to be talking about specifically, and let me go ahead and get into the agenda for today. So it'll literally give you some context of what it is that you're looking to do. And how this is going to be meaningful for you. So first and foremost, we're going to be talking about a framework, and a specific framework that I utilize that you can use in a business plan. Now, keep in mind, a formal business plan is going to be a little different. Now, sometimes I know people are going to be like, well, why do I want a business plan? It might be to attract investors. It might be so you can get a loan from people. It might be just so you can get some clarity. Sometimes municipalities or government agencies want to see a business plan if they're going to subsidize a loan, right? So there's lots of different reasons to have a business plan. But first and foremost, I'm going to give you the framework and the ways to think about it in advance. And then I'm going to show you how that fits into a business plan at the very end. Okay. So some of these things I'm going to be showing about that we're going to be going a little bit out of order, but we're going to be following a framework that will make sense for you. And you can use this framework over and over and over again, no matter what kind of business you want. So we'll talk about the framework, and then we're going to talk about the people. So we're talking about the systems piece, and then we're going to be talking about the psychology piece. So then we're talking about the 4 core functions, which are true in every single business. And then we're going to be talking about what to do so you can scale on the other side, so you can grow and have that controlled growth that doesn't metastasize into something horrible. And then finally, we're going to talk about different resources that I can offer for you and show you how to get a copy of the business plan itself. So let's talk about the systems piece. The systems piece is specifically what I wrote about in this book right here. And this book is sitting on my back shelf back here too. This is a book I published just last year in May, so it's not even a year old yet, called The Time Wealthy Advantage. For those of you outside the US, if you'd like to get a copy, you can get it on Amazon. I'm not here to sell or promote the book. I'm just telling you that you can get a copy of it if you'd like. It's also on Audible, and you have to listen to my voice. I'm sorry. But so some people actually said that they're like, oh, I'm grateful that you voiced it. And I was like, man, that is a lot of work. I don't know if you've ever voiced a book, but man, it's a lot of work. Anyway, so it's there. If you are in the US and you'd like to get a copy of it, you can get a copy of it. Go to strategicboardroom.com and click on the link right on the front page. But again, the reason I'm bringing that up is because that methodology, this Viper methodology, was what I talked about in the Time Wealthy Advantage. So this is what we're going to be going through first and foremost. So the Viper methodology it's an acronym, and it starts with vision, infrastructure, process, execution, and reporting. And we're going to be going through all of these sections and I will make them relevant to how they fit into a business plan. Not all of them will fit into a business plan. However, the whole point of a business plan is to take action on stuff, right? So I'm going to be talking about a few granular things to make this stuff actionable for you while you're trying to implement this business plan. All right. So let's first and foremost talk about vision. Remember, this is a top-down approach. It's strategy. Strategy is not like, well, put the bullet in the gun, right? It's like, it's like, mobilizing the whole force. So I just want to make sure you understand the difference between tactics and strategy. Strategy is the granular stuff. Strategy is the overall, the top-down approach. So that's what we're going to be looking at first and foremost. From a vision perspective, vision has two components. Vision has two components. It is a personal vision and a business vision. Personal vision is simply, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do with your life? Where do you want to go? Personal vision really doesn't have anything to do with income generation. And I don't want you to think about income generation when you're considering your personal vision. For example, if you're married, what is your vision for your relationship with your spouse, right? What is your vision for your relationship in your marriage? Do you have a vision for what you want that to look like? And maybe some of you don't have a great relationship right now. And I'm not trying to be weird about it, because I'm telling you, several years ago, my wife and I were a disaster. And finally, like my faith is a big deal. So we put our faith where it needs to be in God and put that at the center of our relationship. And I really got clear about it with my bride and said, hey man, like, girl, I don't want to get a divorce, but we can't go on this way. Like, so I came to her with a vision for what I wanted my relationship to look like. I came up with a vision of what I want my relationship with my children to look like. A vision for my friends and my faith and my other members of my family, my friends, and even wellness and fitness and food and things like that, right? I want you to think about what you want your life to look like if it wasn't defined by income generation. So, and the reason why I'm bringing this up now, you're thinking, well, gosh, isn't this about a business plan? Yes. However, I would not be in integrity if I didn't bring this up, because people come to me and they're like, they describe me as like a business coach, which I understand why they do. I'm not a business coach. I'm a strategist. And as a strategist, I have to look at all aspects of what you put on the table. And part of what you put on the table is you as a human being. And let's face it, when things aren't right at home, things aren't right anywhere. When things aren't right with your health or maybe you have a crisis in faith or whatever, if things aren't right in that aspect of your life, things aren't right anywhere. So I'm just saying, I want you to recognize that the personal vision is the main circuit breaker in your life, right? So don't skip over that part. And I hear a lot of people, especially younger folks, well, yeah, let me make 50 grand a month and then I'll worry about that great life thing, right? I'll worry about that. The problem is, I have sat in masterminds and in conferences next to people who are making 6 and 7 figures a month, and their life was a disaster, and they were a mess, and they never got that better life, and many of them were like more worried about getting an extra comma in their bank account than they were about having that best life. So I'm not going to spend a lot more time on this. I just want to make sure that you understand. Please spend a few minutes on this and keep revisiting that, and not just having a vision board. That's great, but constantly revisiting it and revising that. Some of you are not some of you are more kinesthetic, like I'm kinesthetic, which means I literally have to write on pieces of paper. Like I have these little index cards with an actual pen, and because I'm a kinesthetic, right? Meaning I have to touch and feel things. Me having a vision board doesn't really do much for me. It's like more like an art project. So having that vision, that personal vision, is really important. Then I want you to consider your business vision, right? How are we going to get there? And so many people, and this is how you're going to reverse engineer that business that's going to deliver that great life for you, right? And here's the interesting thing, is that the danger in creating a business vision without ever creating a personal vision is that you end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. And again, like I said earlier, it just sucks. So I just want you to spend the time. Yes, we're going to move on from personal vision, but I just want to make sure that I want you to think about this. And this is the last piece I just want you to consider when you're creating your personal vision, is consider your 100th birthday speech. Like, you're turning 100 years old. Who would you want to be there? What would you say in your 100th birthday speech? Maybe, what would you want others to say to you after you were done speaking? And then finally, what would be the message that you would want them to carry outside the room when you were done speaking? So I just want you to think about these sorts of things right now, and just go ahead in the comments right now. Tell me, do you have, from a 1 to a 10, 1 meaning not clear at all, to 10, I'm super, super clear, and it's written down. Okay, if it's not written down, it's not going to be more than a 5 in my opinion. But let's say again, from a 1 to a 10, how clear are you on your personal vision? And again, that it's written down, that you could produce. And it's okay. Listen, when someone first asked me this question, I was like, yeah, I know exactly what I want to do. I don't have it written down. I'm good. And then 3 more years went by and I still wasn't good. And I finally started writing things down, and all of a sudden things started to happen for me. Things in my personal life actually started to happen. Last year, I published 5 books. 5 books I published last year. How did that happen? Because I was intentional, because it was part of my vision, right? Because I wrote things down. I was able to have those things as actual goals. So if, again, you want to start really changing things in your life, start writing things down and start with your personal vision. So again, I don't see anybody offering up anything right here. Again, no judgment here. No judgment here. But again, if you're a 1, that's fine. You can only go, there's only one place to go, but up. All right. But if you do have something, if you are working or struggling on that, this is a good opportunity for you to work on that. All right. So let's move on from personal vision. Let's talk about business vision. When it comes to business vision, there are 3 C's of business vision. Okay. This is going to be foundational for your business plan. So I just want you to think about this. When you're putting your business plan together, you're going to need to address all 3 of these C's. There's no getting around it. So I want you to think about your core purpose, your core values, and your client avatar. Core purpose, core values, client avatar. Let's first unpack your core purpose. Your core purpose is specifically what business are you in and what problems do you specifically solve. And it's really important that you are specific, because if you are not specific and someone comes to you and says, well, what is it you do? Right? And you're like, well, I'm in real estate. Okay, that's great. But what do you do in real estate? Well, kind of really whatever anybody needs me to do. Okay, that's not very helpful for getting you referrals. That's not really helpful for you getting you customers. And the problem is this: many of you are in too many businesses. And the same thing for me. Like when I was, owning 7 or 8 different businesses and I wasn't getting traction in any of them, that was a real problem. And all of those businesses, I was the owner operator of 7 different businesses. I didn't own them. They owned me. So when I wasn't showing up for work in business number 4, guess what didn't get done? Nothing. Nothing got done in business number 4 because I was too busy on business number 6 and 7. And then business number 1 was on fire. So I had to run over there, right? What I'm saying to you, it's not a problem to own multiple businesses, but treat them like a bridge. Go and build one bridge at a time. Build one bridge, get to the other side of the river, walk back across that bridge, and then start working on your second bridge with the knowledge of what you gained from that first bridge. And that's the way to start building true economic wealth, in building these wealth engines that runs whether you show up or not. I have a rental business, I have a property management business, and both of those things run without my input. In fact, I spend maybe a couple of hours a month on those businesses. I have to make decisions. I have to write some checks sign some checks every now and again. But that's about it. There's not much that I have to do, which allows me to do things like this and not have my phone ring every 5 seconds. It allows me to write books and teach people like you folks that's not gonna have me distracted and doing other things. So I want you to pay attention to that paradigm and be really specific about what business that you're specifically in and what problems do you specifically solve. Next, moving on from core purpose is the core values. Now, core values, this I know sounds super squishy. Okay, so I want you to think about this. Vimbai says a number, you're 7 on your personal vision. That's excellent. Good. So we got a little bit of work, right? I'm probably about an 8.5 right now. So not that it's a competition, but I'm coming into 2026. My personal vision was about a 7 too, right? But I've also worked on this and I've been doing this for quite some time. But I always, I'm looking for at least a 9, like from my life, right? So good for you. All right, so core values. I know it sounds a little squishy, but here's the interesting thing about core values. When it comes to your core values, you're going to ask yourself what matters to you about this business and how would the world be worse off if you went out of business. These are really important questions to consider, and really, your core values of the business are really just an extension of you. So think about this for a hot second. if you're thinking about like, does anybody ever had a person who's wandered off the reservation in their life, right? So they're basically heading down a path that you can't follow. Well, yeah, we've all had that, right? It might have been a friend, it might have been a family member, it might have been a love interest, something along those lines, right? They were doing things or heading down a path that you just couldn't follow. And the reason that you weren't willing to follow them is because it violated a core value for you, right? Now we all have number of values, right? I value peanut M&Ms, but I don't value peanut M&Ms to the point where I'm going to go to war over them, right? Someone breaks into my office and says, "Give me your peanut M&Ms." I'm like, "Dude, take my peanut M&Ms," right? They come in and break into my house and try to harm my family. They're going to be met with some ferocious resistance, right? Because that violates a core value, right? So it's basically something that you value enough to get you up off the couch to actually take action. That's important. And why is that important? Because the core values define your company culture. Think about that. Your core values define your company culture, and your company culture and your company brand have an inextricable link. So the people outside of your business will experience your company culture in a way that's really, really important. And if you're ever looking to exit a business and sell that business to someone else, I'm telling you, they will pay a lot more money for a company that has a very strong positive culture and a very strong positive brand. So think about companies that might be international companies or might be local companies to you that have a very strong company culture. Chances are they have a well-defined set of core values. Maybe they're not written down, but they do have a well-defined set of core values in terms of what would be allowed and what will not be allowed. Okay? Now here's the thing. If your core values are not defined, they will be defined. And they're generally going to be defined by the strongest personality that's in the room. Now I'm thinking like, how does this have anything to do with a business plan? It has everything to do with a business plan, because most small businesses, and this is very, very true, even businesses, surprisingly enough, that have 40 and 50 employees plus, then they're technically small businesses, but I'm saying they're not small operations. I mean, they're sophisticated operations, but they still operate without a set of core values. Don't be that guy. Don't be that gal. Have a set of core values that mean something to you, because again, your business is just an extension of you. So consider internally what a core value means to you and how that's important to you, and extend that to your business. Okay. So I want you to think about that in terms of your core values. So we talk core purpose, we talk core values. Now let's talk about your client avatar. Your client avatar is who specifically and ideally do you want to serve? This comes into target market and target audience. This is where this conversation starts to come into play. And that is absolutely something you're going to be doing in your business plan when it comes to a market analysis. So think specifically and ideally, who do you want to serve? And you want to break them down into three areas. What are their geographics, their demographics, and their psychographics? Their geographics are where they are, right? We had that conversation with Ben Bai earlier on, right? He was talking about, moving towards more towards Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, right? That's an area where he wants to be in that DACH region. So that makes a lot of sense. So that is a geographic area where Vinbai wants to operate. So now I would say, okay, great, but what about their demographics? Who are they? Are they married? Are they young? Are they old? Are they single? What's what is their wealth level, right? Do they have high wealth or low wealth, right? What's their education level? Are they highly educated or not very well educated? Think about their demographics and in terms of who they are. And then finally, their psychographics. Their psychographics is how they think and how they buy. So think, and this is extremely important to be able to reach them in your marketing. So in the 4 core functions, we're going to be talking about which are lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. We'll come back to that. But when you start thinking about your psychographics, how they think and how they buy is incredibly important for you to know, because otherwise your marketing dollars are going to be very, very inefficient, right? So think about this in terms of the psychographics. Think of the phrase ALIA, A-L-I-A, their attitudes, their lifestyles, their interests, and their aspirations and goals. Think about this for a second. If I knew your goals, okay, so Apostolos, if I knew Apostolos's goals, and I knew what it was that he was trying to reach or trying to hit, doesn't it make sense that I could say, hey, I can offer you this product or service, that way I can help you reach that goal? If for example, if let's say someone was in the United States and I knew that their goal was to get married and have and experience home ownership, right? And they were, and I just found out, hey, they're getting ready to get married and now they're potentially wanting to buy a house. Wouldn't it make sense if I knew that goal in advance, that I could help them? And specifically, if I knew what kind of lifestyle they lived, if they wanted to have a bunch of kids and sell them a 4-bedroom house, or if they were just more of a young jet setting lifestyle and they were like going to delay having kids until maybe later, and they only really needed a 1-bedroom, loft. Doesn't that make sense? If I knew their goals, their aspirations, if I knew their attitudes on things, if I knew their lifestyle, if I knew what they were interested in specifically, if I knew they were interested in NASCAR or American football or World Cup or whatever, wouldn't that make sense? This is really, really important. And I can't overemphasize this enough, especially when it comes to your target audience and your target market, because it's also going to be important in terms of where you're going to market to them. Are they on Facebook? Are they on Instagram? Are they on TikTok? Right? Most of my people are not, they're on social media, but a lot of people come to me through YouTube. A lot of people come to me in various ways. Many of you have come to me honestly through Eventbrite. And because I know the type of people that are on Eventbrite. They're serious. They're taking time out of their evenings or afternoons to educate themselves and get better. It's interesting because when I hold these sessions later on, I get a much less serious crowd. These are people who come in, they're kind of trolls, and they just kind of blow me up, right? And I was like, interesting. So really this time slot has been due to testing. I've tested this, and most of the people who come on here are very, very serious, which again speaks highly of you folks. So I just want you to understand that all of this is around testing, and it's about understanding the psychographics, not only the geographics and the demographics, but the psychographics of your ideal avatar. So don't gloss over that. So your 3 C's of business vision. So we talked about core purpose, we talked about core values, and we talked about client avatar. Out of these 3, which one of these do you feel that you have most dialed in? The core purpose, your core values, or your client avatar? Which one of these do you feel like you've got really dialed in, and which of these 3 you feel like you really need to work on? Go ahead and type that in the comments. I'd be interested to hear what you guys have to say. Which one do you really feel that you've got dialed in out of these 3? And which ones do you really feel that you've got to do a little bit of work? So go ahead and put that in the comments. All right, so that is your business vision and your personal vision. Now, that's the first part of the Viper methodology. The infrastructure is the next component of the Viper framework. So let's talk about that. Infrastructure is just simply the bones of the business. It's things like your desks and your chairs and your software and your computer systems and things like that, right? And you might be thinking, okay, well, again, things like websites, your payment processing software, it's just all this various infrastructure, all right? So you might be thinking, well, why does vision have to come first? I mean, infrastructure is incredibly important. It's the first component of a system of a business. Why would I want to put vision first? Well, the vision is so incredibly important because let's take, for example, let's say Melinda, right? So Melinda, let's say that it's part of her vision, her personal vision, to lay on the beach in Spain for 2 months out of the year, rubbing cocoa butter on her belly. Fine vision. Okay, well, if she creates an infrastructure that's going to require her to return emails and phone calls in a timely manner, that's going to be a horrible experience for her when she's trying to lay on the beach and rubbing cocoa butter on her belly. Okay, so you want to have that vision, that personal vision and that business vision component worked through, or at least ideated, and then you're going to build an infrastructure that's in alignment with that. Does it make sense? All right, so that's what I'm saying. Like when I want you to think about your vision, when you're putting together your infrastructure, your vision has to come before infrastructure. So that is the Viper methodology in terms of vision, infrastructure. Now let's talk about process. Process is simply how you do stuff. It's how you do things. And there's 2 ways to break that up, from tactical and strategic. Now, we talked a little bit about what strategy is, so I'm not going to beat that up right now, but tactical is your day-to-day operational stuff, right? It is things that you do. It's just basically how you do stuff. It's your standard operating procedures. It's your checklist items, right? It's your day-to-day activities. It's your opening procedures, your closing procedures. It's how you answer the phone and how you prepare bank deposits. Those are all really, really important things when you're considering your tactical day-to-day process. If I go back to the Viper framework here just a second, I'm gonna put a box around infrastructure and process. The box that exists around infrastructure and the tactical part of process, that's the system part of your business. That's it. There's really no much more complexity than that. And people try to say, oh, it's, systems and processes. Yeah, systems and processes are very, very important for sure, but they're really not that complex. It's just about the basic bones of your business around your infrastructure and your tactical day-to-day processes. That's it. Okay, so not to minimize those things. They are important, but you have to consider those. All right. So we talked about the tactical day-to-day stuff. Now let's talk about strategic. So I want you to think about it from this perspective. So there you are. You just built this system. You built this battleship or this warship, right? Sorry, I'm a Marine, so I tend to use references like that. But you built this battleship and it's sitting in the harbor. Okay, you've got this infrastructure, your process. That's your battleship. Well, you don't just want to leave that battleship sitting in the harbor just to get beat up against the dock, against whatever economic winds happen to blow through the area, right? No, you want to take that thing out of the harbor and go make some trouble, right? Well, that's what strategic planning does as part of the process component. So strategic planning involves three main areas. It involves people, purpose, and promotion. People, purpose, and promotion. The people component is thinking about who you're going to need. Who are you going to need for this? So think about this from just a perspective. When you're putting together your business plans, you are going to have to hire other people, especially if you're looking to grow, especially if you're looking to scale. Growth and scale are not the same things. Growth can be like 10%, 20%, 30%. Scale's like 300%, 500%, 700%. Like that's what's the difference between growth and scaling is. Growth and scale, like you might have 10% growth or 20% growth, but scale is a completely different metric. It's exponential, whereas the other one is more geometric. So I want you to think about this. In order to have true scale, you have to bring people on board. And the people component is just the people that you might be thinking, well, who do I need to do this? Many entrepreneurs think too much about how do I do the thing and not who do I get to do the thing. That's really, really important. So I want you to think about that is don't just think about how to do the thing, but who do I need that can help me with this? So for example, when you're looking at the people component, you might be thinking externally and internally. So you might be thinking, okay, so externally, I'm looking at I'm opening up to a new market, right? Or I'm looking at a new avatar, right? We talked about client avatar. That's where that aligns with that avatar. So maybe you might be serving an avatar right now, and you're coming up with a strategic plan to open up to a new avatar. That would make sense. That would make sense in terms of what you're trying to do with your strategic plan. Does that track? Am I making sense here? You guys are kind of a quiet bunch, so just let me know that you're still alive. I'm seeing a lot of people out there, but you're not saying much, and that's okay. But you may be in the middle of doing things, and I completely understand that. If you're driving, please be safe. But here's the thing, is like you have to consider the people component of the strategic plan. That also involves internal. So you might be thinking of who is in your organization that you need to tell. Who's in your family that you might need to tell, right? Like, because you're going to need to enroll these people into your strategic plan and let them know that, hey, I'm going to be busy for the next couple of months. Okay. Like, again, I'm in a PhD program right now for organizational psychology. I had to have that conversation with my bride in advance because if I started like not showing up, for dinner because I had homework to do and I'm here at the office trying to get that done, that's not going to work, right? I have to enroll her into that. All right. Thank you, Melinda. Making sense. All right. Excellent. So this is important. So the people component of that is really, really important. So that could be internally with your employees. It could be your suppliers. It could be your vendors. It could be your subcontractors. So you need to consider the people component. The purpose is in alignment with your core purpose, right? And this is really critical because this is what's going to prevent you from wandering. And your core purpose has to be or your strategic purpose has to be in line with your core purpose. Because if it's not, this is like, if it doesn't align, this would be like if Starbucks started selling chainsaws. It doesn't make any sense, right? You're like, well, why is Starbucks selling chainsaws? It doesn't make any sense. Well, you're like, well, because they can. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that they should. And it starts to get very wonky and starts to get people get very confused, right? And the confused mind will always say no. So this is why when you're thinking about the core purpose, or strategic purpose rather, when you're considering your strategic purpose, are you looking to grow in your market share? Are you looking to expand your market share? Are you trying to look to vertically integrate or maybe expand horizontally? Like, what are you trying to do with your core, with your strategic purpose? And that's going to be really important. So it might be to, hey, over the next 90 days, I want to increase market share by 5%. Okay, great. How are you going to measure that? What's that going to look like? Et cetera, et cetera. So what is the purpose of the strategic plan and how long will it last for? Lastly is promotion. Promotion is just communicating. It's communicating outwardly and telling the world what it is you're doing through your marketing and different things like that, through your networking, and communicating internally and repeating yourself a lot with not just the people that work for you, not just your suppliers, but also the people that may be working right alongside of you, your strategic partners. It could be your employees, whatever, but you got to promote this both externally and internally. And that is absolutely critical. So these are three main components of strategic planning. And this is what I want you to start to think about now. So when you look at your business plan template, you're going to be like, oh, I kind of already started thinking about these things, right? So it's going to be really important. So let's put the fries in the bag with process. We talked about tactical, we talked about strategic. Now let's talk about execution. I'm not going to get into the big components here. Like, again, we talked vision, infrastructure, process. Execution really doesn't belong in a business plan. It does to a certain degree when it relates to like marketing, and maybe certain things about how you're going to execute in terms of fulfillment, but it really doesn't get into the day-to-day stuff. The execution here that I'm about to talk about gets in the day-to-day stuff. Like, it gets into the granular everyday things that I'm going to do. So it's not that it doesn't belong. It's just letting you know, like, it's not really something that you write down in a business plan, but I thought it was relevant to leave in. So execution, this was a great quote that I like from George Patton. A good plan violently executed now is far better than the perfect plan that's executed next week. And the reason why I bring up execution is because most plans fall apart in their execution. And the reason why is because I love you guys and gals as entrepreneurs, but the problem is many of you have the to-do list of 37 things that you're going to do today. Ask me how I know. Right? Because I do the same thing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get all these 17 things done today. I'm like, no, I'm not. Right? And the problem is that having too many priorities has the same effect as having no priorities. So this is why I like to boil things down to a daily 5. And a daily 5 is up to 5 highly specific actions that you can take, which will move the needle towards your vision or your strategic plan, either or. Up to 5. Me, I like 3. And this is part of my daily 3. Because for me, if I start doing daily 5, I'm running hot if I'm doing 5, especially if I'm doing 5 every single day. Like, I cannot keep up that pace. In fact, prior to this call, I had to close my eyes for 10 or 15 minutes just because I was overwhelmed, and I don't know what, like, not overwhelmed. That's not really that's not really appropriate for me. I don't really get overwhelmed, but probably just like numb. Like, I needed to like close my eyes because I had too many things I was trying to process, and I did. I cleared my head. Now I'm really good to go. But I have to recognize that sometimes when I'm getting overloaded, and because I have been running at 5, for quite some time, for me, long distance marathon 3, daily 3 is really, really good for me. But what are those things that you can do that will take the needle, that will move the needle for you? What are the things not? Let me just go back to this really quickly. What is not part of a daily 5? Check email, check voicemail, right? That's just to-do list stuff, right? That's not like brush teeth. Like, what are some, and most of these things, especially if you're trying to grow and expand into a new market, most of them are going to be marketing related. Okay. So just want to make sure that you understand that. So that's the first part of this framework here. Let's talk about reporting. The reporting function is around lead metrics and lag metrics. Lead metrics and lag metrics. Lead metrics specifically are based on your actions and your activity. That's what your lead metrics does. They precede the results, the overall results. The lag metrics are the results of the actions and activities. So you really don't have much control over your lag metrics, right? You might say, well, I'm going to get 5 sales today. Really? Do you have any real control if you get 5 sales today? No, you have indirect control, but you don't have any real control short of putting a gun to someone's head and saying, hey, look, are you going to buy this thing? Right? That's usually illegal in most areas. So what I'm saying is, but you do have an indirect control over that. So you do have control of how many times you pick up the phone to call someone. You do have control over how many times you email your list, right? Those are all lead metrics. So I want you to think about that in terms of the difference between lead metrics and lag metrics, because that is going to be really indicative of how effective you are. And guess what? If you don't like the results, all you have to do is adjust your actions or activities. It's as simple as that. So it's good to have lag metrics, but it's also really important to have lead metrics baked in the cake. All right. So that's the Viper framework. That's the systems component. Let's talk about psychology. So we talked systems. Now let's talk psychology. Systems are important, but systems will only get you so far. And systems they offer stability, they offer consistency, they offer accountability, which is all great. But the problem with systems is they're limited about making subjective decisions and adapting to rapid market changes. Coming up with creative solutions is not the purpose of a system. By design, they're not allowed. You don't want a system to be super creative and coming up with different answers all the time. Like, you want your system to be stable. And it's also really not great for initiating and maintaining human connections, like actually having human connections and human dialogue. Yes, AI is great for certain things, but really truly getting to the heart of what's important to people. Look, AI has a place in this world for sure, but to substitute that for human connections, I'm telling you, people are going to, especially if they feel like they've been roped in by an AI bot, and only to come to find out that the person on the other end really wasn't a human being. I'm telling you, people are salty about that. They don't like feeling like they've been lied to. Okay, so I'm just letting you know, systems are great, but they do have some limitations. So this is why I bring in psychology. This is the overall, it's what's called the S&P framework, right? Systems and psychology. So the psychology perspective, you're looking at both personal and individual psychology and business and organizational psychology. When you're looking at personal psychology, you're thinking of things like self-worth and self-management, things like that, like limiting beliefs. These are all individual and personal psychology. And this is really important to consider. Not necessarily that it's going to make its way to a business plan, but it is important for you to think about internally. If you've got a bad relationship with money, it's not going to magically fix itself if your business starts making money. You might be thinking, really? I'm like, it's never happened from what I've seen. And I had a bad relationship with money. And I'll tell you what, until I fixed that, it didn't matter how much money I made. It never seemed to be enough. So I'm just telling you, like, personal psychology, individual psychology absolutely makes a big difference, especially when you're looking at the organizational psychology, right? When you're looking at business or organizational psychology, you've got external and internal. So let's look at those two things, right? So you're looking at business psychology, there's external and internal. External things like buying psychology and even negotiating with your vendors and even politics to a certain degree. So you have to think about the external environment when it comes to business psychology. And those are all things that you need to consider. The internal component, and these are really important things that are going to actually, by the way, going to be impacted on your business plan. Why is that going to matter? I'll give you an example. Here in the United States, Airbnbs, like they were multiplying like Catholic rabbits. And the interesting thing about that is there was a lot of smaller markets that were not happy with Airbnbs being in their market. And especially the hotel people were not super happy about that either. Well, the interesting thing about that is that a lot of these local politicians started putting restrictions on Airbnbs. Well, do you think that made a difference on the Airbnb population? Yeah, it did. It really mattered. And because they started to have registrations and all these different things, it started to get more price competitive. I mean, because there was all of these different factors coming into play, politics absolutely does make a difference. And politics in certain areas have really driven out certain Airbnb markets, right? Driven down certain Airbnb markets. So you really have to pay attention to that sort of stuff going on, especially as it relates to what it is that you're doing. And like I'm not ready to say publicly what this latest business endeavor is that I signed, but I have to make sure that what I'm signing is actually legal and enforceable in areas that I'm doing, because I'm not going to do anything that's illegal or unethical. So I just want to make sure that it's right, and it probably is. I mean, I'm just doing my due diligence, right? But this is why you want to consider these things when you're putting together your business plan. Another thing to consider from an internal perspective, this is the internal side of business psychology, is your management and your leadership. Now, management and leadership, I'm not going to get too super in the weeds on management specifically, because management and the difference between management and leadership is about unity and unification behind a common message. Management is about differences. And management, I feel a lot of management problems could be handled if leadership was solid, if leadership was in a good spot. So I'm going to be hitting on this just for a second. Again, as you're putting this together in your business plan, I want you to think about the type of leadership that you're going to be providing to your organization. The 3 pillars model that I look at, and again, like I mentioned, I'm in a PhD program for organizational psychology, and we talk about leadership a lot more than I was expecting. And it's interesting because there's so many folks who have such horrible relationships with their people. They are not good leaders. And they just think that just because they pay them, that they should do what they say. And that is not a way to lead at all. So to make this interesting, or make it more relevant to you, this is where I looked at 3 main premises. And no matter what model of leadership that I've looked at, these three pillars have been true across the board. And that is trust, vision, and communication. Trust is about making sure that you're showing up in a way that comprises your character and comprises your level of competence. Competence and character. It all starts with character, though. If I came on here and started talking about, like, again, I mentioned my relationship with my bride, and I started like, well, guys, I got to kind of hurry up and get out of here because I got a date with my girlfriend coming up. And you're like, does he mean like an actual girlfriend? Didn't he say he was married? Doesn't matter what I've told you, you are not going to trust me. My credibility, my character is now like really ruined any level of trust that I might have with you. Maybe not for some of you, but for others, it absolutely would be such an egregious violation of trust that it doesn't matter whatever else I bring to the table. Even if I was highly credible, it wouldn't matter. So I'm just telling you, like, trust, it starts and ends with character. The other side of this is your competence. And the fastest way to build trust with anyone is to demonstrate competence. Doesn't matter if you're in sales. It doesn't matter if you're in marketing. It doesn't matter if you're in leadership. All 3 of those things are going to be true, and you have to lead with competence and demonstrate competence to show and create trust with the person on the other side of the table. All right. So that's trust. So you may have high degrees of trust. Like, for example, you may have a really good vision with folks. Like, you might have a very compelling vision of where you want to take them, and you can communicate and be very articulate. But if they don't trust you, they're not going to follow you. You're not going to be effective as a leader. You might have really good ability to create a shared vision. Again, I've said this many times that people often, when it comes to a vision, people are much more inclined to carry a ball that they helped inflate. So I'm not going to come to Melinda and tell her what the vision is, and she's like, great, I had no input on this, right? I'm not going to go to Apostolos and say, hey man, this is what the vision is, and not really care, or Vimbai, or or Cassandra, and say, hey, look, these are the things that I believe, and this is what you're going to do. Well, do I get any vote in this? Because this is my job too, right? Even though you're the boss, you're the leader, can't we have a dialogue? And that comes, right? So you may have their trust. You may be, again, able to communicate, but if you don't have an ability to enroll them into a shared vision, they're not going to follow you. You're not going to be effective. And again, the last piece is also around having high degrees of trust, high vision. But if you're not an effective communicator, or you don't communicate well enough or often enough, again, people are not going to trust you, and you're not going to be, or they're not going to follow you, because you're not going to be an effective leader. They may trust you, they may see your vision, but if you're not effective in your communication, they're not going to follow you. All right. So I just want you to consider that. And you think, man, this is all squishy. Does this really matter? Look, let me tell you why leadership really matters. Right now, I'm writing my next book called Leader Boss. And Leader Boss is really bringing together these 2 concepts of caring versus candor. You might be someone who is super caring, right? So tell me which of this sounds like you guys, right? Go ahead and write it in the comments. Is you might be really caring, and because you're so caring as an individual, that as a boss or as a manager, they walk all over you, right? You're too nice, okay? And that's generally the people who come and want to work with me. They're like, man, I'm too nice. That's kind of I tend to attract people like that. On the other end of the spectrum is that people have too much candor. Is they just kind of tell people the way it is. They don't care about their feelings at all. They just kind of tell them the way it is. And because they have too much candor, right? They may not get walked all over, but no one is going to give them one extra ounce of effort in their work. They're giving them no discretionary effort or time or anything else. They're like, look, I just work here, right? I just check my brain at the door. I'm here at 8. I'm leaving at 5. Don't ask me to do anything else, right? Don't even ask me to come. Don't even think about calling me after work, right? And that's the problem, right? So being an effective leader, especially a leader boss, is you have to have a balance of both. You have to have an effective amount of caring. You have to be able to care, and you have to be able to have tough conversations with them when necessary. And that's what I see a lot of bosses, especially leader bosses, especially people who have smaller businesses, they really tend to struggle with these things. So this is something where a leader 5 company, this is something that I've seen. So if any of these, if either of those resonate with you, let me know. Like, hey, I lean more towards caring or I lean more towards candor, right? Put it in the comments. So this is something where I see the level 5 leader companies. A level 5 leader, this is something that was defined by both John Maxwell and Jim Collins. So John Maxwell, he talks about a level 5 leader that's like a pinnacle leader. Like that's the leader who develops other leaders. But a level 5 leader, as defined by Jim Collins, was just someone who was very charismatic, but also really put the business in front of their own personal needs. And that's about the best way, probably the most simple way that for him to define a level 5 leader. And when he looked at these companies that really had very, very large gains, these were companies that were significantly more profitable. And you may be wondering, like, who's Jim Collins? Jim Collins wrote Good to Great, Great by Choice, Built to Last. He wrote a lot of books where he did a ton of research on, and those companies were significantly more profitable. They grew much faster. They had a much stronger company culture. And guess what else they had? They had defined core values. And these are companies that are very, very well known. These are like Amgen and Intel, Microsoft, Southwest Airlines, Google. Maybe you've heard of it, right? Starbucks. Like these are all companies that had very, very high levels of growth. And guess what? They often make the 100 best places to work. And the funny thing is, those companies often represent the highest stock returns. So I'm just telling you that leadership makes a huge difference because growth requires change, and leadership is what manages that change. And the fact of the matter is that the speed of the leader is the speed of the team. Your team cannot outpace you as the leader. So I'm just telling you that leadership makes a big, big difference. And I'm bringing that up now so you can start to think about what the leadership or not just organizational structure, but what's the leadership going to look like when you get in the organization. And everyone wants to be like the next Google. But the thing is, Google can provide the work environment they do because they're massively profitable. Okay. So I'm just thinking, I just want you to think about like it's not a whole lot different from what General Motors used to be back in the 60s. Like they used to provide a lot of really good perks, right? Until they started getting murdered by their competition. Okay. So I'm just letting you know, like these are the sorts of things that you have to consider in terms of how you're going to show up in your leadership. All right. Cassandra says, I am more caring. Okay. All right. And that's fine. And that's good that you're caring. It's really good. And it's important that you're caring, Cassandra. You just have to make sure that you mix in an equal amount of candor. And in those conversations, generally when saying, hey, look, I have a high level of expectation for you only because I know you can reach them. So this conversation might be a little tough, but we're going to get through it, right? Like that's a way you can have that conversation with them and still maintain your caring disposition, right? So that is the people component. So we talked about systems, we talked about people. Now let's talk about the 4 core functions. This is just a pretty basic, it's straightforward. The 4 core functions of business are lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. And your customer's journey through your company happens in that order. So think about this. Think about the lead generation that they're experiencing, and then from a systemic perspective, you're looking back and saying, okay, well, how they experience my company, it really matters when they're experiencing my lead generation for the first time. And how you're answering the phone, are they answering the phone from a 19-year-old who's smacking their gum on the phone and just answering it any way that they want? Or are they answering it with a phone script and sounding very professional? And what is that buying environment? What is the buying environment that you're creating? And this is really something that you have to start to consider in every aspect of your marketing, your sales, your operations, and your accounting, because this is how your employee, or I'm sorry, this is how your customer rather is experiencing your company. So it's important that you think about this. So I'm not going to say who it is, but there's a marketing company that he's like a marketing guru, and I think it's he and his wife, and they have a specific ad, I think, that's meant to be funny, but it's really not funny for certain folks. And I'm not someone who gets overly triggered by things. Like, I don't get overly sensitive to stuff. I don't find ways to be offended. Okay, let me just put it that way. I didn't find the ad offensive, but I could see how other people might. And I'm like, who are you trying to attract? Like if that's what your marketing is, then like, who exactly are you trying to attract? And maybe that's part of their goal. Maybe they're saying, no, anybody who's going to be offended by this, I don't want to show up. Okay, fair enough. But I'm just thinking, like, I don't know that I want to be that polarizing in a way that's going to put a negative, like for example, I've had a fair number of people drop off this call so far for various reasons. Maybe they thought I was full of crap. Maybe they thought I didn't know what I was talking about. Maybe they just had to go. Who knows? I'm not going to create a story in my head and let that ruminate on, right? And let that rent space in my head. But the point is that I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. But I want them to judge me based on a set of rules that either demonstrate my core values or don't demonstrate my core values. And if they're not liking me because of the core values I demonstrate, that's okay. I can live with that. Okay. So again, you just have to be careful. Again, yes, you can be polarizing, but I don't want to border on offensive. And that's just because again, your customer's journey happens in that order. They're going to be experiencing your lead generation, then your sales, then the operations and fulfillment, and then the accounting. So you got to keep in mind that the sales component is part of fulfillment. It's part of that customer experience. And so is the lead generation. Okay. So we talk systems, we talk psychology, we talked the 4 core functions. Now let's talk about setting the scale and controlling the growth. So in terms of the 4 core functions of business, you've got the lead generation component, which is about targeting your client avatar. Where did we talk about client avatar? Well, that's what we talked about in the 3 C's of business vision way back in the beginning under the Viper framework, right? So I want you to think about that. And when you're thinking and considering your client avatar, you know exactly who you want to work with. And it's easier for you to direct your marketing towards them. And these are the types of people that I bring in with the most money and bring the least amount of drama. And I don't know about y'all, but I don't want drama showing up at my door, right? I'm 53 years old. I've got a 3-year-old daughter. I've got enough drama, right? Right? She's amazing, but she's very dramatic at times, right? And I love that kid to pieces, but like, what the heck? But the thing is, I don't want clients who are bringing me drama. I want to make sure that I'm bringing in a client avatar who's aligned with my core values. So what I want to do is I want to put these 15 reasons up why people will buy. And I'm going to get myself out of the way here. But what I want you to do, and this is going to be just kind of a very basic way. It's not necessarily a market analysis, but it's really more of what you're going to be starting to think about in terms of how your core purpose and what you offer for them in your product or service and how you are best able to help them. So these are the 15 reasons why people will buy. So when you're coming together, what I want you to do is take these 15 reasons, right? They are to make money, save time, avoid effort, escape pain, right? Escape pain could be emotional pain. It could be physical pain, right? Could be spiritual pain. More comfort, better health could be less stress, right? Sometimes you got to get a little creative with that. Feel more love, gain praise, increase their status. People will buy for truth, and they will especially buy for truth if they have felt lied to in the past. They will buy for growth. That might be growth in their knowledge. It might be growth in their faith, right? Could be growth in their wellness. They will buy just because something's new. They'll buy because of novelty, right? They'll buy for more perceived control or certainty. They'll also buy to be in contribution to others. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about this with this list, and I want you to think, how do you, with your product or service, how do you directly or indirectly help people make money? Directly or indirectly? How? And I want you to list all the ways that you do that. So some of you are in financial. I don't remember exactly who it been by. Maybe I think it was talking about you have certain things and you do financial services. You might have, that might be a natural fit for you in terms of how you help people make money. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But some of you might think, well, I don't really directly or indirectly help people make money. I have a cleaning service. Really? Because I can tell you, like, if I come home to a clean house and I don't have to worry about now starting to clean my house or put my dishes away or do different things, start putting my laundry away because you've done it for me, and I'm able to make more money and stay at work a little bit longer because I know that stuff's going to be taken care of when I get home. Don't you think that would make sense? Because my billing rate might be $500 an hour. You're thinking, oh wow, I can now help this person make more money. It makes sense. So that's what I'm thinking, directly or indirectly. You got to get a little creative with this, but I want you to come up with roughly 10 different reasons under each one of these headings. How do you help people increase their status? Right? That might be their status with their loved ones. It might be their status at work. Many people go to Starbucks and go to work with a Starbucks cup because it increases their status. Okay? So I want you to think about that. I want you to think of all the different ways of how you help people with each of these 15 reasons. Now, guess what? You come up with 10 different reasons under each one of these, and now you've got 150 different reasons in terms of why people are going to want to do business with you. That's extremely powerful and can be used a lot of different ways, not only in your marketing, but in your sales conversations. Does that make sense? All right? Does that make sense? That's really important. So please take the time to do this exercise. And again, it will fit hand in glove into your business plan. So when you're looking at your 4 core functions of business, you're thinking about your lead generation. Everything needs to support your lead generation function, because the reality is this: you can have the best, most efficient business. You can be a paragon of virtue, and your sales techniques so dialed in that you could sell voting booths to Castro and you can still starve. That's a problem. So it doesn't matter how amazing your business or product or service is. You have got to make sure that your lead generation function is always running, because if it's not, you will starve, because your customers will attrition out, and if you're not replacing them with new customers, you're going to starve at some point. So you can never, ever, ever take your foot off the gas when it comes to lead generation. So, different lead generation activities, I'm telling you, especially if you're looking to grow your business. And Genius says, yes. I think that was under the 10 reasons why people, or 15 reasons why people buy. Yes, I would agree with you. I would say yes too. But in terms of the lead generation activities, look, honestly, 60 to 70% of your daily activities, if you're looking to grow your business, need to be around lead generation activities. And most people do the opposite. Most people get sucked into 60 to 70% of their day putting out fires, maybe 10 to 20% at most being a little strategic in terms of the direction they want to head in, and maybe 10% towards lead generation. It's completely backwards. You have to be spending a lot of time, and I would say this is probably minimum 60 to 70% in lead generation activities. And this is also why you need to be getting people that will help you in your lead generation activities. Okay. So this all leads you to your sales conversation. The sales conversation continues the conversation that started by the lead generation function. So again, this also understands that effective selling is about finding solutions. It's not about holding people's heads under water until they say yes, right? That's not at all what you're wanting to do, right? You want to make sure that people have it's about finding solutions and not necessarily just trying to get someone to say yes, right? It's getting a customer, not just getting a sale. The last piece there is you've got the operational function. Now, again, if you're going to get stuck, generally you're going to get stuck in the operations, right? I kind of mentioned that a few minutes ago, where if you're going to get Like you get stuck building the websites, you get stuck putting on the roof, you get stuck doing the thing, right? Fixing the cars or whatever, right? So generally, if you're going to get stuck, this is where you're going to get stuck. If you're going to ignore something, generally you're going to ignore the accounting. And it generally sounds something like this. Well, I have more money in my bank account this month than last month. I must be doing okay. I have said those exact words, and I have a degree in accounting. Okay. So I want you to think about this. Look, if you said those words, it's okay. But this is where I want you to stop and think about it. Look, are all these things the same skill set? No, they're not the same skill set. Lead generation and accounting have a similar skill set, but they're not the same thing, because lead generation and accounting really are very metric. They're really about rules and really about testing, right? The lead generation is about testing and testing metrics, but accounting is about metrics as well. But most people would say, well, lead generation and sales are very similar. They're not. They're not exactly that similar. They're not. They're similar, but not the same for sure. But they are definitely not the same skill set. So I'm just telling you, this is why many business owners struggle, and this is why many business owners have trouble growing, is because they're trying to do all four of these things because they are not the same skill set. And again, at the end of the day, I'm telling you, I am the worst, least qualified person to do my own bookkeeping, because I know I will not do it. I will find anything else to do other than my own bookkeeping, even though I have the skills to do it. I just won't do it. So I'm just telling you, this is why you may need other people. And when you're bringing other people into your organization, guess what they need to be aligned with? They need to be aligned with those core values. Again, here comes again that second C of business vision. It's coming around like a bad penny. Again, thinking about your core values. You're going to be hiring people that align with those core values. Like I said earlier, your core values define the company culture, and the company culture and the company brand share an inextricable link. You cannot separate those two. And the interesting thing is when you have your core values well defined. And I want you to think about this. Your core values are what's going to create unity in your organization. They're going to make you a far more effective leader. And it's going to give a true north for people to make decisions by when you're not around. And core values create unity, and vision thrives in an environment of unity. So please don't skip over all these different things. I know I brought a lot of different things up and, different areas around how to scale. But right now, as we're getting into the business plan and setting you up for success, beyond today, there's 9 different components to a business plan. I'm just going to highlight them here. They're really not going to get into the weeds on this. We've been on the call about an hour and 15 minutes now, so I want to cut you guys loose. But I also want to give you an opportunity to download the business plan. Costs you nothing. You don't even have to enter in your email address or anything like that. You just go to the website. I'm going to show you how to do that. But the 9 areas starts with industry, then your product or service, right? So we talked about industry, which is what, right? What business are you in? And then the product is what problems do you solve, right? What's your product or service, right? What's your offering? Your target market, what does that sound like? It sounds like your client avatar, doesn't it? Right? And your target market and your target audience. We start talking about demographics and market size. Remember, who are these people? Where are they? Why would they buy from you? We didn't really talk about competition, although I do think that is important to know when you're putting together a business plan. And the reason why for that is because it really enables you to see what other offerings are out there and how you can be different from them. Because if you are getting into a business, and this, I didn't make this big point here, but I make this point a lot in Marketing Magic. I think that's coming up on Wednesday if you guys want to sign up for that. But differentiation is absolutely critical, because if you're going to be going into a business where you have a Me Too product, oh, you do this, I do this too. That's a Me Too product. And the only way for a customer in their mind to differentiate is on price. And when you're competing on price, I'm telling you, it's a race to the bottom. I do not like to compete on price. So that's where you start considering when you have differentiation, you start thinking about your marketing strategy, and you start thinking about the critical risks and your SWOT analysis, your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. There's a financial component to that where you are thinking about your what's called a pro forma balance sheet or pro forma income statement. Don't worry about if I'm using a fancy word. Pro forma just means projected, right? It means future. Okay. So if you hear that, like, oh my gosh, I don't understand what a pro forma is, right? You're fine. It'll be demonstrated on the template. And then, of course, metrics and milestones of how quickly your business will be growing and how you project it to grow. So if you'd like a copy of this, go to Strategic Boardroom, and you can do this now if you like. I'm going to get myself put down in the corner so you can see what I'm actually doing here on the screen. But if you go to strategicboardroom.com and you pull up this site, for those of you, again, who are in the US, I'm just going to hover that. If you go to that button right there, if you're in the US, you can order the copy of the Time Wealthy Advantage plus some other bonuses in there. You can do that there. If you're outside the US, please order it from Amazon because they can do fulfillment like significantly faster than I can do. If you want a copy. So what you want to do to get your copy of the business plan template is go up here to courses and logins on the top right. Okay. And when that opens up, it's going to open up again. So you go to strategicboardroom.com, go to courses and logins, the top right. It's going to open up this page. You're going to scroll down a little bit to where it says free courses and downloads. So the free courses and downloads is about halfway down the page, and it's right there. It says free 9-step business plan template. Okay. So it's right there. You cannot miss it. Okay. So any questions on that? Should be pretty straightforward. All right. So if you'd like to join me right now, I am not charging for this, but I will be charging for this at some point. And only because I'm not saying that to be kind of weird. I'm just saying that right now, I literally have just signed up for this community on School. And if you are interested in joining me, you are more than welcome to. But just understand at some point I will be charging for this, and I've got the pricing up there now. It's it'll be $119 a month, but there is no charge if you want to join right now. And so I'll be having different things on there. My intent is to have a school room and a board room. The school room is basically the classroom, is where you're going to be learning and educating yourself on various strategies of business strategies, marketing strategies, branding strategies, just things like that. Leadership strategies, all different sorts of strategies. And then we're going to take that to the boardroom. And so you say, hey, I learned this. Now, how do I apply it to my business? So that there's going to be different concepts between classroom and boardroom. And that is what you'd be signing up for. So anyway, that is all I have. That is this is, of course, the room there, Strategic Boardroom. I don't think it looks like that, actually. I think I have a different graphic there, although that graphic's pretty cool. So again, if you'd like to go to the school.com/strategic boardroom, that is what I have. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for sticking around. If you've got any questions, go ahead and head over to the schoolroom and you can ask me some questions there. I'm going to head over there here in just a couple of minutes. I've got coffee working on me right now, so I got to go drop that off. But thanks so much for sticking around, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the boardroom.